Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Happy April. It feels like this year has already gone so fast. And today I wanted to do my first nonfiction reading challenge update or check-in. Whatever, it's the same thing. But anyway, if you are not familiar, I started the year off with announcing that I would be doing a nonfiction reading challenge for myself and that I shared the challenges with you in case you wanted to join me. So I will link the video where I talked more specifically about the entire challenge. Basically, it's 16 challenges that I made for myself to promote or inspire me to branch out within nonfiction. So I thought that today I would check in with the books that I've read for the challenge so far and what I'm currently reading for it, as well as the next upcoming reads I have planned. So I won't go into much detail in terms of the books themselves. I will just sort of talk briefly about how I've connected them with the challenges, and I will link everywhere that I've talked about the books in detail in the description. So hopefully this won't be too long a video. But starting off with the 3 books that I've read for the challenge so far. So I initially planned this as a very casual reading challenge, and I created the specific challenges for, there are 16 in total, but I decided quite early on that I wanted to make it female specific in terms of the authors. I wanted to challenge myself to read only women writers for these challenges. It is not at all like a criteria for you. You do you if you're planning to do the nonfiction reading challenge. But I decided to up the game for myself because I think in general I probably read I think it's very easy for me to pick up more male writers because some of my favorite genres within nonfiction are quite male dominated, especially for things like natural history. So I decided to create another layer for myself and to only include books for this challenge that are written by women. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because that is going to be apparent in the selection I have here. So the first book I read for the nonfiction reading challenge is My Salinger Year by Joanna Rakoff, which I decided to choose as my read a debut novel, or read a debut, I mean, it is not a novel. And this is written by an author who has actually previously published fiction, I think, prior to this book, but this was her first nonfiction, so that is how I am counting it as her debut as a nonfiction writer. And this is a memoir about the author working as a literary agent's assistant. It's about her life as this assistant, about her work, and also about her personal life. And I really enjoyed it, and I will link where I've talked about it in the cards and in the description. The second book I have here is The Collected Schizophrenias by Esme, Weijun, Wang, which I decided to choose as my read a new release or a book published in 2019. This was published in 2019 in February, and it is published by Grey Wolf Press, and it is basically a essay collection all around the author's experience of schizophrenia. I thought this was absolutely fantastic, and this is my favorite book so far of the year, so obviously I loved it. It is very thoughtful and very beautifully written, as well as very engaging and informative, I found. So I would highly recommend this if you are at all interested in the subject. But yeah, as I said with the previous one, I will link where I've talked about it. And the last one is my most recent finish, and that is read a book about a non-predatory animal, or read a natural history about a non-predatory animal. This is where I'm starting to sort of interpret my challenges for myself to fit with the books I want to read. So I've chosen A Honeybee Heart Has 5 Openings by Helen, Jukes, which is it's basically the author's memoir of 1 year doing beekeeping. So it's about the honeybee And the honeybee is obviously not a predatory animal, so that fits with my challenge. It's just that it's not necessarily heavy on the natural history around the honeybee. The honeybee is a big part of the book, and it's about the beekeeping of a honeybee, but it's so much more than just a natural history book, so that is where I'm bending the rules for myself. But it is my challenge, so I can do what I want, and I just, in general, I made these challenges to inspire me, not to restrain me, so I decided that this would fit, and it is basically, as I said, the author's memoir of 1 year doing beekeeping, learning beekeeping, and throughout that year she talks about her own personal life changes, as well as the nature of the honeybee and some of the things that's so interesting about this animal, which I think if you've read this book you will probably be as fascinated by honeybees as I am now. I've been watching some honey making videos, like what's it called, the actual like production of the honey. I find very interesting now, and I'm actually quite scared of bees, so I find it it's interesting for me to be interested in them, since I've kind of avoided bees for most of my life. So yeah, so those are the 3 books that I've read for the Nonfiction Reading Challenge up to this date. The 2 books that I am currently reading for the challenge. So first is a book that I've mentioned before in currently reading videos that I'm very slowly making my way through, is 4 Sisters, The Lost Lives of the Romanov Grand Duchesses by Helen Rappaport, and this I chose for my read a book and then watch a documentary about the same topic. I've decided to read this book about the Romanov family. My plan is to watch The Great Tsars, I think, is a documentary on Netflix, so connecting sort of the royal Russian family topic. I've read about 1/5 of this so far, and I've really enjoyed the tone of it and the writing style. I've put it to the side slightly because I am currently reading another biography, and that is Beatrix Potter, The Extraordinary Life of a Victorian Genius by Lear, and this I am reading for my challenge of read a biography about an inspiring woman. I am currently buddy reading this with Amanda Center and Amy Anders, and it is a very enjoyable reading experience reading it together with them. I'm finding it very interesting to hear their thoughts and constantly having to think about the content of it. But this is obviously a biography of Beatrix Potter, who I find very interesting and very inspiring. She did so many different things, and one of the things that is very apparent in this biography is that a lot of various things inspired the work that she is known for. So this is my pick for the, as I said, biography of an inspiring woman. Very good so far. The next on the docket, so I have this book that I've I think mentioned before in a nonfiction book haul, and that is Swell A Water Biography by Jenny Landreth, which is part a memoir of the author's experiences of swimming, and part a history of women's swimming in general. I think that the topic of it is very interesting because women were not always allowed to swim. It was seen as quite a scandalous thing for them to be that barely dressed. So this book is, if I can find a good description of it. Swell is a joyful hymn to the sport and an exploration of why swimming attracts so many women. Ultimately, it is a book dedicated to our brilliant swimming foremothers who collectively made it possible for any woman to plunge in with clarity anywhere we choose. So it's basically a book about both the historical aspect of women swimming and also a personal account of that. And I'm obviously reading this for my challenge of reading a book about sports. Hopefully this one I will enjoy. I tried another book that didn't work out, so this I will hopefully enjoy. And the next one I have is a book that I haven't figured out if I will place it as read a book about something extraordinary or something ordinary. I would love your help if you've read this book, but it is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell, and the subtitle is 17 Brushes with Death. So it's basically about 17 near-death experiences that Maggie O'Farrell has experienced in a memoir. I think some of the near-death experiences are very like far-fetched. Some things are more serious. But I haven't figured out if I'm gonna be categorizing it as something ordinary, in terms of like death is obviously a very ordinary thing. It's an inevitable thing and therefore ordinary, but the story itself seems to be quite extraordinary. So if you've read this book, please let me know if you think if it's better with the ordinary or extraordinary. But either way, I really want to read this very soon, so I think I will end up choosing it for one of those challenges in the near future. So those are some of my current and recent nonfiction reading that I've done specifically for the Nonfiction Reading Challenge that I created. I would love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning to read any of them.